AITA for not telling my parents that the event they were missing was my wedding? Buckle up, guys, this will be kinda long.
So I, 27F, have a younger brother, Mike, 21M. He is the definition of a man-child and a mama's boy, always complaining, always expecting others to bow to him.
Just, overall, an asshole. Ever since he was born, my parents fussed over him for everything.
He's not special needs, or had a traumatic birth or anything of the sort.
He was just born. And my parents completely discarded me.
My mom, 50F, especially. She went from a loving mother to one of those boy moms that people make fun of on the internet. My father, 50M, still showed me love and support, but he's always been too much of a coward to stand up to my mother and let me win at least once. The only one who stood for me was my grandpa, 76M, who always called my parents out on their bullshit and never liked my brother. I remind him of his late wife, my grandma, and we have a very special bond, but he lives on the other side of the country and I could never see him often. Mike knows our mom prefers him and loves to shove it in my face.
Because of this and his behavior, we've always been at odds. He's spoiled, a brat and an awful human.
I can't remember how many times I ended up in trouble for things I did better than him or for things he framed me with. His only talent are his football skills. He won a scholarship to a nice college out of state. My parents didn't spend a dime on my education because apparently my fund had been used to cover expenses after a fire, just for me to discover years later that said money were given to Mike to buy a car and a house.
It's at public university that I met Lucas. He was the first person I was really drawn to there.
Of course I met new people who are now my dearest friends, and thanks to them and Lucas, who was my best friend for years before we got together, I managed to move out of my parents' house. Now both Lucas and I are well known in our fields and have very good salaries.
Now, to the main issue. Lucas proposed to me a year ago.
We're very private people, so we didn't post it on social media or anything, and when I told my parents they dismissed it with a "that's nice," I'm starting to think they downright didn't listen to me at all.
We decided that we wanted a nice but simple ceremony and reception with our friends and relatives. Lucas convinced me to invite my parents and brother, but they never responded to the invite.
And whenever I went to visit and began to talk about my wedding, without mentioning it was a wedding, my mom would always speak over me and about my brother's accomplishments and wild adventures. At one point I got fed up with it, and interrupted my mom to tell her that there was an event I was planning to organize, whose date was unmovable. She told me that they couldn't attend, because my brother was playing the last game of the season that very same day, and wanted them to be there. Of course, this favoritism didn't surprise me. They missed my ballets, shows in both my high school and university graduation for things about him.
At this point, I wanted to be petty.
I told both my parents that it wasn't a problem to miss this event, purposely omitted the fact that this event was my wedding, and didn't insist further.
Flash forward to a few weeks ago, I got married. It was perfect.
My family, Lucas' family, and our friends were all there, and we had a blast.
My grandpa was happy to give me away, and it was just perfect. My relatives asked me multiple times why my parents weren't there with us. I was honest and simply said they had my brother's game to attend, and couldn't come. They gave me a few looks, and my grandpa was visibly angry for a while, but otherwise nothing strange happened. After the reception, Lucas and I left for our honeymoon, and were phone-free for the whole duration of the trip. But once we got back, we discovered that a shitstorm was welcoming us home. I turned my phone on, and was unable to even unlock it before a storm of notifications popped up. Most of them were from my mother and brother. Mike called me all sorts of nasty names and insulted me because, apparently, one of my paternal aunts posted the photos of the wedding on Facebook, and captioned it with a very obvious dig at my parents, especially my mom, for missing the wedding. The post apparently went viral in my parents' community, and they've been publicly shamed for their mistreatment of me. It also turns out that my grandpa personally visited my parents to go on a tirade to shame my father, his son, to the point of tears. And this seemed to be my father's breaking point, because he was so distraught for missing his only daughter's wedding and for his father's disapproval, that he finally rebelled against my mom and is threatening divorce unless she makes it up to me. I think that's the reason why my mom has been spamming my phone with messages, at first insulting and threatening and then downright pitiful, full of begging and pity parties. Now I'm at home with my husband, deciding how to approach the situation. Most of my relatives, even those I didn't invite to the wedding, reached out to apologize for what I went through and to claim they had no idea this was happening at home. Can't blame any of my relatives, they all live with my grandpa on the other side of the country or in another state, but my mom's sisters and friends are belittling me for not telling my mom about the wedding, because now she's inconsolable at the thought of having missed my wedding. Personally, I think she just claims that to save face, but I'm not sure. The latest messages from my father and mother seem extremely saddened and hurt for missing my wedding. Now my family is divided on three fronts: the majority who is sticking by my side, my maternal aunt shaming me for hurting my mom's feelings, and my maternal grandparents who are adamant that I forgive my mom in light of her atonement. My best friends are telling me not to listen to them. So, Reddit, AITA? AITA for refusing to move in with my long-term GF until our sex life improves. So this one may require some backstory to build up to the big argument which happened a few days ago. I, 23M, have been with my Janine, fake name, 23F, for 8 years now. We began as school sweethearts and have had our ups and downs, but for the most part have been a very happy couple for that whole time. We love each other's families, really enjoy each other's company, and have known for a while we wanted to tie the knot and settle down at some point. Talk of moving in together has been on the cards for a while, but we wanted to stand firm on our plan to buy rather than rent, so we have been saving for years now and are both in a position where we feel as though we can afford a deposit and have enough outside of that to make mortgage payments with both our salaries. Everything feels perfect except for one thing: our sex life. For the past 2 years this area has been near on non-existent. Initially the sex began to ramp down in frequency at what I thought was natural. Every few days became once a week, but this felt normal. We still live at home so it can be awkward, but this was what I felt to be natural now for where we were in our relationship. However, as time went on this dwindled more and more, and we are now in the position to having not had sex in 4 months. I have tried to initiate, but I get the cold shoulder so frequently that it has burnt out any wanting for me to try. At first when I questioned this, Janine told me she was feeling a lot of pain. Of course I didn't want to force her into anything, so we stopped then and began looking for ways to help. Initially we believed this to be vaginismus, but over time we realized the symptoms didn't quite match up to what we thought, so kept looking. Well, I kept looking. Janine didn't show any signs of wanting to push to help this. I recommended doctor's appointments, but she disagreed with the need to go to the doctors for this. I mentioned therapy and she shot this down too. I would research home remedies and she would read what I sent over and disregard it as, that won't work for me. Initially with the pain we settled on performing different acts that required no penetration, but this did not last long. She would always turn down advances and blame a particular element of my approach. I came on too strong, I wasn't coming on enough to get her going. I initiated too quickly, I took too long, and now she's turned off. It's not spontaneous enough. It's too spontaneous and I didn't give her enough time to prepare. It's too loud in the house, it's too quiet and will be heard, etc. This really knocked my confidence and made me consider ending things, but every other aspect of our relationship was perfect, so I didn't want to say anything. Anyways, on to the present. The argument. When we first began looking for places, I mentioned our sex life and stated that I didn't feel comfortable getting a mortgage together if we didn't have an active sex life, as it would be harder for both of us to deal with at that point. She was taken aback by this, but after discussion agreed we'd keep looking and she would work on becoming more active sexually. That was a year ago. Fast forward to the past few weeks and we realized our finances were in the right place to move. Janine asked what day I would like to go and speak with a mortgage advisor, and I told her I didn't. She was confused and asked what I meant, and I explained as above. In the year I had been saving for this mortgage under the agreement to move in should she work on rebuilding our sex life. In that year she had done nothing and taken no action, even going the 4 months without initiating or engaging with me about this. As said before, I didn't want to force her but wanted to see some form of effort at being more intimate in our relationship. She stopped kissing me without my initiation in this time also. She has seen 0 doctors in this time for her medical issues and has refused my advances of couples therapy. When I finished explaining, I said our finances are there, but I am not ready to pursue this next stage together without work on our sex life. She was furious with me and stated that I was holding our future at ransom to have more sex.
She stormed out and I haven't heard from her since, other than a text message telling me she wasn't coming to a dinner date I had planned and to call her when I had decided to not be an arsehole anymore. Whilst I feel that my intentions weren't cruel, I now feel like I may be the arsehole for building up to this point of building our finances to suddenly halt it like this. I understand her feelings of betrayal, but I just can't move in knowing our sex life is going to continue non-existent.
AITA? AITA for canceling a beach trip with my in-laws after they whispered lies into my daughter's ear? AITA?
I need to start with the background information. Last month, my wife, 4 kids, and I moved halfway across the country to Texas, to a town where my family lives and my in-laws recently retired. We had a manufactured home set and have been waiting for the electric company to make the connection, and so we've been staying with my in-laws during this time. My in-laws wanted to retire to Florida, but when time came to purchase a home, they weren't happy with their options. They knew we had plans to eventually move to Texas, and so they figured they would go where we were going ahead of time to spend their retirement with their grandchildren. They offered their home to us, our 4 children, 10, 6, 3, 1, 2 cats and a dog. There's a little more at play here. Our oldest daughter, 10, is not biologically mine.
She does not know that I am not her biological father yet. We've been wanting to tell her, but there never seemed to be the right time given the last few years have been rocky. So we've been making an effort to spend more time with her, as being the oldest of 4 is difficult, and to ensure there are no doubts in her mind that I love her and care for her as much as her siblings. One last thing, my mother-in-law planned a trip to the beach in a few weeks and has already paid for the Airbnb where we've all planned to go together. That being said,
the story begins July 4th. We bought minimal fireworks to enjoy in the in-laws' backyard, which was pitch black at the time, 21:30. I was standing in the yard, and from my perspective, I could faintly make out everyone else's silhouette in the outline of the roof against the night sky. I have these adult poppers. I've never seen these before. They're small cylindrical red tubes and give a loud pop when they hit the ground hard enough. I was intending to hurl one at the roof of the house to give everyone a startle, and I threw it as hard as I could. I guess I released the popper too soon, and it doesn't matter. It hit my wife in the shoulder and ricocheted into my oldest daughter's eye before popping.
Completely by accident, and she thought her eye had been popped out all of a sudden and couldn't see.
Debris got inside. We rushed her in.
I could hear my mother-in-law say, "Why would you throw a firework at her?"
I ignored it because I was worried about my daughter.
We removed the debris, she calmed down, and we gave her ice and ibuprofen. She was made comfortable and has since been checked out and is fine.
The next morning, my daughter wakes me at 9 a.m., it was a late night, saying that both my in-laws had told her that I don't love her and that no one in this world would love her as much as them. They told her that I was drunk, which I hadn't had a drink, and thought it would be funny to hit her intentionally with the popper.
My daughter asked, why would they say that?
She said she knew I loved her and that it was accidental. I felt terrible for what happened, but I'm glad she knows that I care for her. Why would they say these things to her, during the struggle of the move and stress for a girl her age is going through after doing everything we can to foster her confidence? So I told my wife I appreciate what they're doing for us, but they're going alone to the beach. I refuse to go anywhere with them, and I don't trust them alone around my children.
Am I the a-hole here for this?
The kids were looking forward to it, the wife was excited, and now I'm being seen as the bad guy. I realize I am the asshole for being irresponsible by throwing the popper, which hurt my daughter, but it wasn't intentional.
Am I in the wrong for canceling the beach trip for what was said to my daughter? I also do not want them alone with my children anymore. AITA?
Edit, I just want to say, I know we're fortunate the popper firework didn't cause more damage to my daughter. I'm also well aware of the fact that I made a terrible decision and was reckless in doing so, and for that I am a complete idiotic asshole.
As for my stepdaughter,
her sperm donor relinquished his parenting rights before she turned 1. I began a relationship with her mother, I taught her ABCs, shapes, I helped provide structure, eventually a place to live, but never once did I act like her father until my first was born. How could I raise my own with this 4-year-old girl whose only concept of dad is me, and not also treat her like my own? She should know the truth, I agree, and perhaps should have known sooner. But we are making a plan and she will learn the truth soon.
AITA for refusing to consider stopping our divorce after my ex admitted her psychic friend lied about me having an affair?
I met my wife, Rona, when we were in college together. I made the obviously terrible assumption that the fact she was in post-secondary education meant she had a modicum of common sense. We started dating our senior year and after job hunting settled on moving back to her hometown after graduating. We found an apartment and lived together for 2 years before getting married. All good so far. At our wedding I met an old friend of hers, Anna. She offered to read my poem since she was part gypsy. Weird. I am in construction and I know a few people from that group and they call themselves Roma. Whatever. Anna only comes to town every once in a while. She lives in NYC so she doesn't have time to visit since she has an exciting life there. She makes costumes for plays and cosplayers. So we see her maybe 4 times over the next 2 years. Last time she came was Labor Day last year. And that's when it got weird. All of a sudden Rona starts acting oddly. She starts checking in on me at work. Coming by when I'm working late. Asking to use my phone because hers is almost out of power. That sort of thing. She finally comes out and accuses me of having an affair. I thought she was joking so I laugh and say that I am not. This sets her off like a Roman candle. Because Anna told her I would laugh it off when Rona came for the truth. I laughed because it was ridiculous. I barely had time for a relationship with my wife and my job. I am home all weekend long. When I go golfing her brother is almost always either in my foursome or at the club. And most important of all, I love my wife. I wouldn't do anything to harm her. And yet she takes the word of Anna the psychic seamstress over mine. She asks me to leave our apartment. I say no because I have nowhere else to go. So she leaves and moves back with her parents. They think she is nuts too. I spent the next few months working and trying to convince her that I'm not cheating and that I want her to come home. I don't get invited to Thanksgiving because it would be awkward. I didn't even stick around for Christmas. I went home to see my family. They have been following all this stupidity without commenting until then. At Christmas they had an intervention. They said my wife was having a break from reality and that she wasn't coming out of it. My dad told me to give my head a shake, which he only does when I am being monumentally stupid. When I got back I went to a lawyer and started my divorce. That was in January. Finally at the beginning of April Rona calls me to talk. I say that we should talk through lawyers. She starts to cry and I agree to meet her in public if she will allow me to record our conversation so I can give a copy to my lawyer. She eventually agreed. Turns out her and her parents hired a private detective to find my affair. 6 months and a huge bill later, zero evidence of an affair. She finally believes me and wants to come home. I tell her that our lease is up in July and I already found a job in Denver near my family. She says she would come with me. I respectfully declined. I told her we just weren't right for each other. The truth is I do not want to have my offspring share DNA with this dingbat. Anyway, I am moving ahead with my divorce. I am gutted that she took her friend's psychic vibrator over mine. Her family has approached me several times. The last time her dad offered to front us a 25% down payment on a house if I agreed to go to marriage counseling instead of just leaving. I politely declined. I cannot be bought. Rona is now depressed, but I see no way of ever trusting her again. She is young enough she can marry again and wreck some other guy's life. AITA? AITA for leaving a dinner party after a girl sat on my husband's lap? I am still so shook with everything, so sorry for my rambling. My husband, Jake, and I have been married for 3 years and from the beginning he was very close with his best friend's sister, Cindy, 18F. Well, my husband would often talk about her and tell how he had seen her grow up throughout the years. Cindy is always very bubbly and seems very fond of Jake as well. I remember when we were dating she would ask to come along on our dates a lot. I never really said anything as I like spending time with her as well. She was like a little sister to me. When we announced our engagement she asked to my husband to better not forget her after being a married man and to still hang out with her. Well, we got married and I even made her my bridesmaid. Soon we moved to a different state and kind of lost contact. Now Jake's best friend came to stay with us for some time and Cindy came along as well.
Now the moment she saw us, the first thing she said was how hot my husband has gotten, and she was glad he didn't look like those boring married men. Then throughout their stay, Cindy would just ignore my presence and will be way too close with Jake. I told Jake that it was looking a bit inappropriate and to ask Cindy to tone it down, but he said that Cindy is just a bit childish and is that way with everybody. Well, at their last day we decided to host a dinner party for everybody. During the party I was with Jake when Cindy came and told me, "Oh, I need to steal you our husband for a while," and before I could say something she grabbed Jake's hand and took him for playing games. I ignored it since it was their last day, but then throughout the dinner she was getting way too close with Jake and would just drag him away whenever I would be around while giggling at me. When everybody sat for dinner I sat beside Jake and Cindy came last. She then said, "Oh, there is no seat," and then just went and sat on my husband's lap. Everybody was surprised and Jake said laughing, "Cindy, stop acting like a kid, you are not a kid anymore." Cindy started laughing saying it was a joke and got up and sat on other seat while giggling at me. Yeah, I was so angry with the disrespect, and with the fact that Jake was so cool with it, but I didn't want to say anything bad so I excused myself, took my car and went out. About 1 hour later Jake called me asking where I was. I told him I am going to my friend's house and I will come after Cindy has left. I know what I did was terrible, but I was so angry at that time that if I had stayed there any longer I would have probably started fighting or crying. I came the next day and Cindy and her family had left. Jake was very pissed and said I took things too far. I started crying and told him how everything made me feel. He said I was horrible to think such things about Cindy and that she was like his sitter. I told him that I was not doubting his intentions, but I was hurt by how disrespectful Cindy's behavior was and he was enabling her by not saying anything. He started saying that I sound ridiculous and couldn't even take a joke, referring to the sitting on lap incident. I said regardless I don't want her in my house again. To top it off, Cindy sent a message saying that she was sorry about making me so insecure in myself, and that she would make sure to make me feel better, but I should not have left as it was pretty childish and kind of spoilt the mood. It felt so backhanded, I didn't reply anything to her. I just told my husband he needs to maintain a distance with Cindy. He asked if I was giving him an ultimatum. I said if he will go as far as disregard and disrespect my feelings for Cindy. This really rubbed my husband the wrong way and he said since I have such disgusting thoughts in my mind, and is giving him an ultimatum anyways, then he might as well leave because he cannot leave with such an insecure person who has such disgusting thoughts about him. He packed a bag and left to his mother's place. I have tried apologizing numerous times, telling how sorry I am for everything, but he is ignoring my texts and calls. Later Cindy's brother texted me and called me a bunch of names to think like that about his sister, saying Jake should just leave me and a disgusting person like me deserves to be alone. I could not stop crying after that. How to fix this? Is there a way to even come back? Was I so wrong to deserve this? Any more. Subscribe to Basic Spoon for more awesome Reddit content.